Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is KarQ. Welcome to the KarQ, the KarQ Archives channel. Today, we had RAMATTRA'S gameplay trailer released and a developer blog that breaks down his abilities. So I thought it would be cool to kind of put the two and two together so you can see the ability in the trailer, and then we'll talk about the breakdown from lead balance designer Josh Snow and Tess Lehman, the associate game designer, together. So we can learn RAMATTRA together and figure out the implications of what this tank means, who is going to be live December 6th on Season 2 of Overwatch 2. Cool. Let's watch this trailer.
I do not.
That is so loud. Cool looking hero. Honestly reminds me of Magneto.
This is not my victory. It is ours.
Okay, so the first thing you see is the high noon, and he puts up the barrier, blocks it, and then you see this primary fire's swarm of projectiles. Okay, so that's the first part. Let's open this up. So in this blog, the Omnic form, when you first select RAMATTRA, he's going to be in Omnic form, which is that form you just saw with the staff, right? And his weapon, so that thing you just saw in the trailer, is the Void Accelerator, and it comes with primary, secondary fire. The primary fire is that stream you just saw. This stuff. Not that. That's the secondary fire. Right here. Bzzz, firing those nanites. So, Void Accelerator's primary fire... Void Accelerator's primary fires out a stream of fast-moving nanites, says no. The nanite particles have a travel speed that requires you to lead your targets, but there's no damage fall-off. This gives RAMATTRA a longer range option, but there's an advantage to using his weapon close range. Lehman elaborates on this point. If you're close to enemies and put your staff right in their face, you're going to do quite a bit of damage, especially if you're hitting crits. So, biggest takeaway point here, number one, is that the Void Accelerator crits and does double damage. This is kind of new because a lot of times projectiles from tanks don't crit, like Sigma's primary fire or Zarya's beam. Like, these don't crit per se on the head, but these do if you hit their head, and crits are 2x damage by default. There are certain exceptions to the rule, like Widowmaker is 2.5 times for a crit, Kiriko is 3 times, and back in the day, Orissa's in the beta, she was like 1.5 times for a crit, so we're not sure what that means. It just says you're doing crits, so it could be any range of those numbers. Let's assume 2x for now. And we get long range. It requires you to lead your targets. So basically, the farther away they are, the more you have to lead your shots because of the slow-moving projectiles, assuming they move in one direction, so by the time it hits them, they intersect. The projectile speed seems a little slow based on this trailer, so they say it gives you a longer range option, but generally speaking, you probably want to play mid-range. You're certainly not a Hanzo sniper by any means. Like, you can just totally tell by this. It's like it kind of reminds me of, it's like a very wispy kind of projectile. So, yeah, definitely medium. He still feels like a medium range hero, because obviously if he has his nemesis form, you want to get up close and like put yourself in a position to probably transform, is what I'm assuming. But this is just in the early to mid or poke phase, you stay in Omnic form. All right, the secondary ability we saw with the barrier is called Void Barrier, a temporary high health barrier that RAMATTRA can place in a targeted location. When you activate the barrier, you'll see a line on the floor to confirm where you want to place it in its range, which creates a few different playstyles. Use it defensively to protect your teammates and cut off enemies, or use it offensively to create space and close the gap between you and the enemy team. Everything about this form enables you to close the gap between the enemies. You can use this form to tactically move in on enemies and activate his nemesis form, where he gains 2 new abilities, Pummel and Block. So yeah, just like I said, I didn't even read this part, but like the whole point is to use this in the early mid poke phase, close the gap, and then transform, because you want to get up close. That's going to be his playstyle. I think a lot of ball players are going to enjoy this hero because they kind of play similarly, where they transform, you roll around, get engaged, and then you use your primary fire in balls form, you ball form in, transform to primary, gun them down. This is similar. Close the gap with the shield, or use it defensively, block high noon like we just saw there. But this is different than Sigma's shield, and I can already assume this is probably less HP than Sigma's shield. Sigma's shield is 700, which you can recall and replace anytime. This one is a point and click, and I don't think you can move it, and it certainly goes on a longer cooldown. You point on an area, click it, it goes up, and it's probably stuck there. So if you have a bad shield placement and then the enemy just walks forward and then you probably recall the barrier, or maybe it's up the whole time, it's probably going to go on a cooldown. I'm going to assume anywhere between 4 to 8 seconds seems pretty natural, because you don't want the ability to be too similar to Sigma's, right? Although block, when we get to in Nemesis form, actually really does sound a lot like Doomfist's one, minus getting the empowered punch. But anyways, that's his Omnic form. Nemesis form is where he changes both his appearance and weapon, becomes a giant protector or a threat depending on your perspective. He bulks up with extra armor, and he forms 2 extra arms which serve as his weapons in Nemesis form. We have Pummel, which launches a short-range power wave with each swing. It's also a piercing attack, so if there's enemies stacked within range, they also get hit, and it plays around Ryan's shield, defense matrix, or Winston's bubble. So none of those abilities will block it. Even if they have a shield up, the shockwave pierces through it, kind of like Winston's Tesla cannon. Defense matrix, no problem. If she's matrixing your team, just fucking punch through her and pierce through everybody. That's actually pretty cool how wouldn't say there's no counterplay to it, but it allows you to play past like mitigating stuff, which is actually kind of cool. He's a tank, right? I assume it won't be, he can probably get punished pretty hard because he has to get up close, so he's gonna take a brunt of damage, right? So it's difficult to dance in and out of bubble when Pummel goes straight through. So this is actually going to encourage disengaging against Nemesis form, in my eyes, right? Because nothing can quote-unquote mitigate it, no shield, you have to use natural cover. I'm sure that will still block the Pummel. I don't think it's going to pierce through like actual wall geometry. Speed out, disengage, or use natural cover when he transforms. And then for block, Ramatra throws his big tank arms in front of his face, really similar to Doomfist. Effective at reducing damage from Hanzo's Dragon, Torb's Molten Core, despite them surrounding him. So that's pretty cool. Block slows his movement speed, only applies damage, only applies to the damage received from the front, leaving him vulnerable from behind. It's very similar to Doomfist's power block, actually. There's actually no cooldown on the block, though. You can use it whenever you want by weaving it in and out of your attacks. The trade-off is you can't punch while using it, and it slows you down. Okay, so it's similar, but not really, to the Doomfist block. Oh, it tells you Nemesis is an 8-second ability with an 8-second cooldown, so you aren't permanently in this form. You'll need to time which form you're in carefully, because the abilities from one form won't be present in the other. That's actually pretty good. Well, let's look a little bit at what this form looks like. That's the barrier. This is probably the pull-down ability, which we'll get to in a bit. Let's talk about Nemesis form really quick before we go back there. So that's what they were saying. Punch, piercing punches, AoE, block at any time from the front. They don't disclose how much you're blocking. I'm going to assume maybe 50% block, only from the front. And it doesn't mean he's not immune to CC. So playing people like Ana, probably hook him out of the block, rock him as Sigma, all that fun stuff. Block, block, block. AoE punch, that range actually looks kind of gross. You see how far? Okay, yeah. Well, it's because each punch launches that shockwave, right? And that shockwave has a range that goes through everything. So just don't be deceived by the punching animation. Just assume he's just firing out projectiles. That's an easier way to assume it. Look at that range, boom. And then barrier, no problem. From here, from the close to the entrance of the point where the truck is, and it hits him on the point through a bubble. You have to like, if you're playing against Ramatra here, you have to like dance around this actual like, you know, this lamppost instead of sitting in your bubble. You're not safe if you're low in there. So you have to jiggle against that. Hop on into cover. Okay, so let's talk about this ability right here. Big force field. Pulls people down and slows them. That's all we get in the trailer. Reading it here. Ravenous Vortex is a ball of nanites that slows, grounds, and damages enemies. This ability is a projectile that bounces off walls, enemies, and slippery slopes, but it must hit the floor to activate. And once it activates, it'll open up a big area that slows enemies, pulls them down to the ground, and deals damage. Okay, so you throw this, it's gonna bounce off a wall, kind of like a Junkrat grenade, if you want to put it that way. If you throw it on a roof, it'll probably slide up and then wait until it comes all the way down, and then it'll activate. It actually does, it really is like Junkrat's thing. It has to hit the ground before it activates. Ravenous Vortex keeps Ramatra enemies in Ramatra's sweet spot, where he can deal damage easily in either Nemesis or Omnic form. You can use his ability defensively to keep people off your teammates or lock down certain areas. Ramatra can use his ability to halt the enemy team from rushing you. Enemies have super weak jump when they're caught. Winston almost goes nowhere. So if Winston, this is actually a huge counter to Winston. Winston is the best tank in the game. If he's about to leap, you fucking throw this shit down and pull him straight down into gravity before he wants to leap away. D.Va wants to fly away, yoink him down. Echo, Pharah want to fly. We don't know what the vertical range is. It looks pretty damn high, and they showed the Echo in the trailer, the Pharah here. Gonna get yoinked down. That's gonna be quite interesting. He doesn't finesse his way into fights. That's crazy. And also, I just saw in this screenshot, 450 HP. And Nemesis form gives him 600. So that's probably assuming this is an Omnic form. This is going to give him 150 armor when he transforms right away. So Omnic form 450. Nemesis is 600 with 150 armor gained. That's pretty dope. And this pull down AoE thing is crazy to combo. This reminds me of Orissa's old halt in Overwatch 1 where you throw it out, have your team throw stuff in it. Like your Sojourn can just shoot. If you're pulling people who are trying to jump away, down, you Sojourn E them, you Torb Coom on them. You can combo so many things with RAMATTRA'S ability. And this one apparently is available between either forms. Nemesis form, you can only punch and block and throw this out. Omnic form, you can shield, use your primary fire, and also throw out this ability. So that's pretty dope. All right, the last ability is called Annihilation, which is his ultimate form. He goes back into Nemesis form, which, by the way, 8-second cooldown, lasts 8 seconds, but you can go back into it. So what I assume is that if you use Nemesis and you're about to get transformed back, pop your ultimate to go back into Nemesis form right away. And Energy Swarm lashes out towards any enemies within range, dealing constant damage. It's similar to Transcendence in a sense where it creates a big ring around him. Annihilation has beams that latch onto enemies within range, depleting their health. Enemies need to be within that ultimate's range and RAMATTRA'S line of sight, but there's another caveat. It doesn't end. If the beam is attached to an enemy, it pauses the duration of the ultimate. The ultimate itself is relatively short, but if it's attached to someone, it is not ending. So these tethers, while these tethers are attached to enemies, RAMATTRA has all the benefits and abilities from Nemesis form, and he gives enemies 2 options with his ultimate, either eliminate him or move. You guys played League, it's like Renekton or like Nasus's ultimate, just a big AoE swarm. If it's touching you, it'll stay on forever. So your option is to either completely duel him or disengage. This is why Lucio is going to be even more essential. Lucio is still going to stay S tier in season 2. I can see Winston getting knocked down a few tiers because this guy kind of like owns him, right? If he has to get close and he's constantly swarming and doing damage to him, here's the transformation. We saw the punches, blocking form, then he popping the ultimate. Boom. Here's the energy swarms they were talking about. The range seems pretty wild. See how Soldier, Pharah, they're all within range. So this ultimate, he's not going to leave Nemesis form as long as something is tethered. That is probably about 15 meters, if I had to guess, here to here. Not sure if it'll go through shield. Can you break the tether by holding up your shield? This is hitting the Ana. This is hitting, I don't know who that is, Soldier. This is hitting Mercy, but it's not hitting Rhine. So you can assume the shield can block it. So if there's a tether up and you're Sigma, and you're the only one attached, maybe put up your shield and you dance around it to hopefully break the tether to kick him out of this form. That's the one counter play I can think of right here. One important thing that I just missed after finishing that recording was that his ultimate Annihilation creates the swarm of nanobots that creep out. Remember I said how it tethers and stuff, but it reduces enemy damage dealt by 50%. So earlier when I mentioned you either want to commit and kill him, I think you actually have to get out of range because a damage reduction of 50% is insane. We saw what Necrotic Orb did in the Overwatch 2 beta with Moira and how you could literally survive D.Va bombs and a bunch of crazy things. This is crazy implication if this stays in the game. I don't see it like that is ridiculous. You have to use a barrier break line of sight of him immediately when you see this ultimate. So yeah, everything else seems pretty straightforward based on what we saw in the developer blog, but that's an important point. Just wanted to point that out. Yeah, it's not going through Rhine's shield. So that's a pretty interesting discovery right there. Right? Is that not going through Rhine's shield? Yeah, it's totally not. Punch, punch, punch. Although, if you're Rhine's shield, you kind of just feel helpless. Yes, you can block the tether. You need to block the tether or else you're going to take damage. But he can just punch you through that. So Rhine feels like a pretty shitty matchup against him. Or maybe you just commit and charge into him and charge him off the map. Or pin him into the wall. Shatter him, maybe. But this is a transformation ultimate. So if he gets shattered or stunned, it doesn't mean he gets kicked out of this form. He's completely transformed the whole time. At least I don't think.
This is not cruelty.
That's dope. That was a great trailer, all things considered. Okay. A lot of implications there. Let's see this final the final part of this article. Yeah, RAMATTRA'S playstyle is complex and multifaceted, mirroring his history and ideals. Omnic form is highly tactical and gives us a glimpse at RAMATTRA'S ingenious mind. Nemesis form is huge, imposing, and violent, a physical manifestation of his rage. When he unleashes his ultimate annihilation, he roars, "Suffer as I have." Magneto. Through this ability, we see the pain he has experienced in his long war against humanity, and it makes you wonder, is there anything he won't do to save his people from extinction? To Season 2, December 6th. RAMATTRA, dope. Looks great. We still don't know the true cooldowns of all the abilities, minus Nemesis being 8 seconds. I don't know what the Ravenous Vortex cooldown is. Not sure what the Barrier cooldown is, nor the HP when he puts it up, but all things considered, based on this trailer and breakdown, he looks like a really cool hero. KarQ is going to be 20 minutes. That's it for me. Appreciate you guys. See you guys in the next one.